What did that one teacher at your school get fired for? That one teacher was Mr. M. He was a 6th grade science teacher and everyone loved him. He was a firm but fair teacher that made sure we all understood the material and even made learning 6th grade science material surprisingly enjoyable. Every Friday, he'd wear silly bright red shoes, and for birthdays, he would take a photo with the birthday kid with him standing on his head on their desk. Like I said, this guy was great. During one lesson, when I was in 8th grade, a student dropped a thermometer on the floor, broke it, and spilled a very tiny amount of mercury on the floor. Mr. M cleaned it up, but apparently not the right way, according to the administration. Once they caught wind of the story, he was forced to leave for apparently putting kids in danger, even though that amount of mercury would not even be close to dangerous. Everyone was crushed. A ton of students all banded together to buy him a new pair of red shoes. Last I heard from him, he got a great job in another school in the state, where he's loved by the students there too, so that's good. I'm friends on Facebook with him. I should ask him about what's new when I can. One of students was a son of the director/head of the board. I caught him cheating on my final exam. It was a definition question, and I found the edit web page where he copied the exact answer. I, of course, gave him an F. At the end of that semester, like a week later, I was told to leave. He passed my class with a C without my approval. Edit. Just to clarify the situation, I saw him using his phone. I didn't tell him that. I just asked why he was looking under the desk. He said he was playing with his phone, followed by arguing that it's not against the rule to do so. The question was to define velocity. It's easy enough that you can phrase in your own words. Less than 5 words. He wrote 3 sentences, which was too good/detailed for a guy who doesn't even bother to memorize F equals ma. The definition was copied from the textbook. It was copied from one of the first Google results. The kid was known to do such things by the students and the teachers. Other students didn't give a shit about him, and most teachers didn't want to deal with him. I didn't care to argue with him. My school and a guidance counselor that was just a really nice guy, always really happy, and knew every kid's name. He was so nice that he paid for 2 kids' lunches every day for about 2 years because they had told him their family didn't have enough money for lunch. Well, eventually he found out they were full of shit, so he brought them in his office and told them they were to pay him back every single dime. Well, the 2 boys didn't like that, so they went to the principal and said he had been sexually assaulting them for the past 2 years. Now I knew these kids. They were fucking scumbags and were mad they got caught and made up lies. So the teacher got investigated. Long story short, they found out he had never done those things and the 2 kids ended up admitting they had lied. Well, he was still fired because of the controversy surrounding the investigation and parents saying they didn't feel their kids were safe. Utter bullshit. 2 kids ruined a man's life who had been working at this school for over 15 years, all because he wanted to help them, and they lied to him. Getting angry at a student with a limp for not walking fast enough. When the student tried to explain the limp, she persisted that the limp was all in the student's head and was faking it to spite her. That teacher was a bitch the whole year, checking the pencil cases of only the brown kids during exams. Marked guys worse than girls because all of the guys are lazy. Had one student who got straight 100s whole, nobody else could get anything above 90. Encouraging students to run across the street after the lights had stopped counting down, etc. But this was the last straw for her. We had a drunk teacher, the male teacher who fucked his way through most of the single and not single female staff, the male teacher who was way too handsy with the female students, and the male teacher who got into a literal fist fight with a student during gym class. None of them were ever fired. It was his first year at our school, and he was a dickbag. For one, Mr. Bag constantly talked about much better his daughter's high school was, and how if our parents cared about us, they would send us there. He really wanted to work at her school, so he didn't care about us or his job. A student's parents called Mr. Bag to complain about some grading issue, and the next day, Mr. Bag called that student out by name to the whole class and talked about how his parents are whiny and annoying to complain about such a trivial issue. So, some friends and I went to the principal to talk about what happened. I guess Mr. Bag heard about this, and a few days later he raged at our class, screaming, yelling, throwing things at us. He got dragged out by police that day. A teacher went to a store with a student to get razor blades for them to do coke together. Instead of paying for them, they tried to steal them, got caught, and the police found a bunch of coke on them. The student happened to be the son of the chief of police and received no punishment. The teacher of course was fired. While the H1N1 virus was spreading, one of our teachers decided to show his 5th grade class a video about the virus. But it turned out that he taped the video over a gay porn movie, and for a whole 20 or so seconds, before he could turn it off, a whole class of 5th graders were shown graphic gay porn. He never came back to our school, but was moved to one not too far from ours soon thereafter. The teacher of the year my senior year, which for some reason they award in September, was fired by April for being drunk in pretty much every class, dipping in class, and having his students write his lesson plans for him. He always had a beer in his travel mug. I hated to see him go though, because he was the coolest teacher at that school. A couple years after I graduated, the new assistant band director was fired. Actually, he was arrested in the middle of filling out his resignation, so they had to fire him to complete the process for sleeping with a senior. What baffled me is, when he was student teaching he got a girl at that school pregnant, and then while he was working at my school he was always texting the junior and senior girls trying to get them to come over to his house, and nobody saw a red flag. Wasn't a teacher, but the principal himself at my elementary school. One day he exposed himself to some women, not students. Thank God. I'm pretty sure he got jail time for it. I still remember that time he ran into me on the playground and knocked me over while playing dodgeball with a group of kids. He had an affair with a student beginning when she was in 8th grade up until after she graduated high school. Everyone was always suspicious because he gave her credit cards, hung out with her alone in his room all the time, etc. In the meantime, he began dating a fellow teacher. They got married and had 2 kids. People only found out because the godfather of their kids, also a teacher, got wasted at a party and blurted out that the former student's boyfriend had confided in him a few weeks earlier about discovering the whole thing. Turned out, the wife knew, and she perjured herself in his court case by covering for him. Both of them got fired. Good thing too, cause they were assholes even before their lives turned into the plot of a Lifetime movie. Oh yeah, and it was apparently discovered around the same time that the principal had been participating in a cybersex chat room with a bunch of students as well. IDK if that was ever proved, but he disappeared mid-year, so it was pretty fishy. Our new 7th grade French teacher broke down in front of the entire class. First she started crying about the hair extensions she lied to us about. A week earlier she had told us it was for fun, but it was actually because her hair was falling out. She sat at her desk and cried about the really bad acid rain she was caught in years earlier. She then started blaming the people she was traveling with for not warning her. They had to walk through the acid rain for an hour apparently. In between sobs, she would keep asking us things like, what would you do if there was acid rain around here? What would you do if you lost all your hair? She wouldn't stop crying, and it made the entire class feel uncomfortable. Nobody moved or said anything. We just blankly stared at our desks or the French posters for about 20 minutes. A few days later, that teacher suddenly moved away, and the school replaced her with a crazy cat lady. I had a teacher get fired from my middle school when I was in 8th grade, and then he got a job at my high school and was fired my senior year. When I was in 8th grade he taught Spanish and got fired for telling a girl that if she ate M&Ms it would give her breast cancer, giving another girl, who must have been about 11, roses on her birthday and giving her a kiss on the cheek, and showing the class Super Size Me because somebody mentioned offhand that he liked McDonald's, as well as a few other things. Fast forward my senior year of high school, he comes in as a substitute teacher for my physics class. All he was supposed to do was give out a worksheet and then make sure we worked on it. He didn't even mention the worksheet, and instead all he did was give a lecture about how 9/11 was an inside job because jet fuel can't melt steel beams, and how Ebola was population control, and how the government was out to get us. Edit. Some people are accusing this of being fake. I know it's ridiculous, but it's honestly true. The reason he could get a job at my high school after losing his job at my middle school is because I went to a private middle school. When I was in high school, we had this one pet teacher that was pretty much a friend to my friends and I. He would always joke about things with us like sports and stuff happening around the school. Then one day he started talking about some of the female students with us, and it got really creepy. He would go on and on about some of them and it almost sounded like he was stalking them or something. But the weirdest thing is he refused to dispel with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. Algebra teacher NHS. Enter dumb bitch. Why are you late? Car math. I had stuff to do. Did this stuff include your homework? No. Why don't you just leave? Like your wife left you? Collective exhale / OHH. Approach his desk. My wife is terminally ill. I will ask that you leave this classroom again and tell you never to mention my wife again. Or what? Or I'll smack some sense into you and then kick your ass out of my class. Still come af. Yeah right, you need this low paying job to take care of your wife. I see the fuse burn and the switch goes off. He cocks back and slaps the ever living shit out of this dumb bitch straight out of her chair, picks her up by her belt loop and drags the dumb bitch out of the class. He was fired and they tried to sue, but the whole community rallied around him and shunned her family. His wife died about 6 months later and over 1,000 people showed to the funeral. I'm not saying he was right, but he wasn't wrong either. I've got two that come to mind. One was an old basketball coach of mine. According to the news reports, he sold meth, like a lot of it. The other was in college and he actively tried to sabotage students, told them he would blackball them from the industry, told female students they should be in the kitchen, and he literally taught nothing. Like he sat in his chair and told us to work on our shit for the entirety of the 4-hour-long classes. He then proceeded to pass like 10% of the class with zero explanation, after not ever bothering with scoring or grading, or critiquing our work in any way. After using my work on the last day of class as an example of good editing / quality, he failed me, with grades 3 weeks past due date mind you, and refused to respond to any of my inquiries. I went to the department head, several deans and the president about it because they were all fucking useless and they essentially told me to go fuck myself. This was the last class I needed to graduate. I had a transfer and a job lined up. Both were fucked. He got at least 20 other student complaints that I know of cause I organized that shit with interquarters. He still works there. No joke, if I ever see that guy again I'll crush his fucking skull like the mountain. Cost me years of my life. / rant off. My preschool teacher was fired several years after I was there. She was a royal bitch, the definition of one. I remember when I was there, she would humiliate a student if they got the answer to a question wrong. If you had to think a long time to answer, she would go, "You're in La La Land today." I brought my stuffed animal cat to school one day and she announced to the class, "Look, Lab 102,813 brought his kitty to class. He's in La La Land today," and encouraged the other kids to laugh at me. During nap time a kid got in trouble for peeing on the floor. She made him sleep outside, at least that's what I remember. She was fired. Okay, so we used to have this chemistry teacher that let us mess with the chemicals in the back room. Well, one time I was screwing around in the chemistry room when my friend told me to sniff this one tube. It smelled like shit and my nose started bleeding, and long story short, my chemical teacher let us make chlorine gas and almost kill each other, and she didn't come back the next year. He was a science lab assistant. A friend of mine searched up the guy because he is strange like that and found the guy's Twitter. On the guy's Twitter it was basically him saying he likes to get fucked in the ass, and if anybody knew how to get in a porn video, well, screenshots of the tweets got out and spread like wildfire. Within a few days it was said he wasn't coming back.